The icy wind howled through the streets as Jonathan pulled his coat tighter around his shivering frame. His hands, numb from the cold, clutched the handle of his old duffel bag, his only possession left after losing his job and apartment. He had never imagined he'd end up here, wandering aimlessly through the city with nowhere to go. Tonight was particularly brutal. Snowflakes swirled through the air, landing softly on his tattered shoes. He hadn't eaten in 2 days, and the hunger gnawed at his stomach like an unbearable ache. As he walked past a small diner, the warm glow inside made his chest tighten. People were laughing, sharing meals, sipping steaming coffee. Normal life, something that now felt so far away. He sighed and kept walking. Further down the road, a small gas station caught his eye. The sign on the door read, "Help Wanted, Night Shift." His heart pounded. Maybe, just maybe, this could be a chance. He stepped inside, the bell jingling above the door. Behind the counter stood a young woman, probably in her late 20s, wearing a name tag that read, Emily. She glanced up and immediately noticed his worn-out clothes, his tired eyes. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice cautious but kind. Jonathan hesitated. "I saw the sign outside. Is the job still available?" Emily's eyes flickered with hesitation. It's my dad's store. He handles the hiring, but he won't be back until tomorrow morning." Jonathan swallowed hard. "Please, I'll do anything, even if it's just for the night." Emily looked at him for a long moment. There was something in his eyes, something raw, desperate. Without a word, she reached under the counter and pulled out a half-eaten sandwich. "Here," she said, sliding it toward him. Jonathan's pride screamed at him not to take it, but hunger won. He grabbed the sandwich and devoured it in seconds. Emily leaned against the counter. "Rough night?" Jonathan let out a hollow laugh. "Rough year?" She didn't pry, but something about him struck a chord in her. She had been down before. She knew how quickly life could turn. "You can stay inside for a while," she said, "just to warm up." Jonathan nodded, relief washing over him. As the night wore on, he ended up helping around the store, stacking shelves, sweeping the floor, even fixing a flickering light bulb in the back. By sunrise, Emily's father, Mr. Dawson, walked in. He was a gruff, no-nonsense kind of man, and when he saw Jonathan behind the counter, his brows knitted together. "Who's this?" he asked, suspicion dripping from his voice. Emily quickly explained, adding, "He worked through the night. And honestly, he's good. We could use the help." Mr. Dawson studied Jonathan for an uncomfortably long moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, he sighed and said, "You start tonight. Midnight shift. Be here on time." Jonathan blinked. "You're hiring me." "Do you want the job or not?" Mr. Dawson grumbled. Jonathan nodded quickly, his throat tightening. "Yes, sir. Thank you." Emily shot him a quick smile, and for the first time in months, Jonathan felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. Over the next few weeks, Jonathan worked tirelessly. He saved up enough to buy a decent jacket, some warm gloves. Emily and he became friends, sharing quiet conversations over coffee during breaks. Life was still tough, but at least he had a starting point. One night, just as his shift was about to end, a commotion erupted outside. A man had collapsed near the gas pumps. Jonathan rushed out without thinking. It was an older gentleman, clutching his chest, his face twisted in pain. "Call 911, Jonathan shouted. Emily was already dialing. Jonathan knelt beside the man. "Sir, can you hear me?" The man's breathing was ragged. He tried to speak, but no words came out. Seconds felt like hours. The ambulance finally arrived, and the paramedics took over. As they loaded the man onto the stretcher, one of them turned to Jonathan. "You saved his life," he said. "If you hadn't acted fast, he wouldn't have made it." Jonathan swallowed hard, staring at the ambulance as it disappeared into the night. 2 days later, something unexpected happened. A sleek black car pulled up in front of the gas station. A well-dressed man stepped out, and Jonathan immediately recognized him, the man he had saved. He walked up to Jonathan and held out his hand. "Name's Robert Carter," he said, "and I owe you everything." Jonathan shook his hand, unsure of what to say. Robert smiled. "I want to return the favor. Tell me, what do you need?" Jonathan hesitated. I just need a chance, a real chance." Robert's eyes softened. "Consider it done." Within a week, Jonathan had a job at Robert's company. It wasn't glamorous, just a mailroom position, but it was stable, with real opportunities. As he packed up his few belongings to move into a small rented apartment, he turned to Emily. "I wouldn't have made it this far without you," he said. She smirked. "Well, don't forget me when you're rich and famous." Jonathan laughed, a genuine, deep laugh, the kind he hadn't felt in years. He wasn't rich yet. He wasn't famous. But for the first time in a long time, he was no longer alone. And sometimes, that's all it takes. A stranger helping a stranger. A simple act of kindness that can change a life forever.